Hey, welcome to Atlee Church. We're so glad that you decided to join us for today's service, no matter where you find yourself on your spiritual journey. Just to let you know a little bit about Atlee, Atlee is a safe place for those who've given up on church or never went. And our mission is simple: to reach seekers and equip believers to love God, love themselves, love others, and serve the world. Now, if you want more information about who we are as a church or ways for you to get connected, make sure to check out our website at atleechurch.org, or you can also visit us on social media or download our app. And we hope today that you find the service helpful and also encouraging no matter where you are in life right now. So let's get started with today's service.
When I look at people, I always ask the question, I say, man, tell me what Nike stands for. They said, oh, Inc., that's easy, just do it. I said, tell me what Adidas stands for. Oh, Inc., that's easy, man, impossible is nothing. I said, now tell me what you stand for. When people look at you, do they think excuses? When people look at you, do they think victory? When people look at you, do they think that's a person that's gonna give me everything they got, not on some days, but on every day, and it's not gonna be predicated upon if I feel like it, because I think we all know if we only worked on the days when we felt like it, none of us would get much accomplished. I'm talking about the real level of commitment. Not the commitment that falls in line if everything goes right. I'm speaking of the commitment that says, I am going to stay true to what I said I would do long after the mood that I've set it in his life.
See, most people, ladies and gentlemen, are stoppable. Most people, all you have to do is tell them no. All you have to do is make it inconvenient for them. All you have to do is make it difficult for them, and they'll stop. See, when you go to get your goal, don't think that all you have to do is think positive and everything's going to work out okie dokie for you. When you go to get your goal, you are sending a telegram to Murphy's Law to visit you personally.
You thought you was just going to have a dream and a goal, and you was just going to wake up and just walk into the sunset. You're like, dream, boom. It don't work like that. You have a dream, and then life punks you. Life punks you and say, do you really want this? You're gonna lose friends. Do you really want this? Do you really want this? Cousins gonna abandon you. People that you used to be like this with gonna think you bougie and don't wanna deal with you. It's a part of it, but I paid too much. If I was gonna quit, I would've quit in the abandoned building when I wanted to commit suicide and take my life. I should've quit when I heard my voice say, your mama don't want you, your daddy don't want you, take your life. I got through that, so why I'm gonna quit over F on a grave? Come on. And so I'm telling y'all, you have come too far to quit now. You have invested too much to quit now. You have lost too much to quit now. Don't cry about it. Don't whine about it. Get a reward for your pain.
And so by being committed to everything that I started, I finished it. It built a certain type of spirit. It built a certain type of mentality. It built a certain type of individual. And so now I couldn't quit even if I wanted to. I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. I had too much sweat equity in my life and everything that I was doing.
You're too close to quit now. You gotta take another lap. You gotta take another lap, because you never know. This might be the one. You can't stop because you're tired. You can't stop because you got your feelings hurt. You gotta take another lap. Keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. You're gonna make it. You're gonna do it. You got an unstoppable fire. Come on, take another lap. Don't you stop. Don't stop walking.
Hey, can we make some noise? Everybody stand up for just a moment. I want you to repeat after me like you mean it. All right, we ready? All right, here we go. I'm in it, to win it. I've come too far to quit now. Make some noise. All right, you can be seated. The locker room motivational speech before the big game. Anybody ever been on the receiving end of one of those? Yeah, some of you have. Any of you play sports growing up? Like a team sport or even an individual sport? Anybody play sports now? You know, like ball with a pickle, something like that? Some of you, that was from my buddy Angelo back there. Pickleball, whatever that is. So that almost sounds as bad as going out and hitting that little white ball with a club. I hadn't figured that out yet either. Real sport, well, we'll talk about fishing later. So what is your sport of choice? Turn to somebody next to him and tell them, if maybe you don't have a sport, but if you did have a sport, what would it be? Turn to somebody next to him and tell them what it is. And how many of you would be honest to say, I hate sports? A couple of you hate sports? There you go, all right. So I played sports back in the day. I played baseball. I was a right fielder for the Kickotan Exchange Club, Little League. Anybody play Little League baseball growing up? Yeah, quite a few of us did. Then a few years later, I played football. I was a defensive right end. I don't know what it is about the right side of the field, but that's where I always seem to end up, is on the right side of the field, I guess, as opposed to the wrong side of the field. And I remember my number. I was number 88, defensive tight end. And I remember the first year that I played. There's several things about that year that stick out in my mind. One was the exercise routine. I had never experienced an exercise routine like that before in all of my life. It was amazing. I learned that I could do some stuff that I had no idea that I could do. Leg crunches, just all kinds of things that the coach would have us do. And I remember at the end of every single practice, we had to run a lap. And this lap was almost a mile long. And we would take off. And I remember that the first week, I would always end at the end to almost to the very end of the pack. And I always thought, how in the world did those guys, after exercising and doing everything that we just do, have enough energy to run like that? I remember a couple weeks into it going, all right, I can do this. I'm not going to keep coming into the pack. Next thing I knew, I went out one day. I don't know what happened, where it came from, and I remember this as if it happened yesterday. I ran and came in like third place that day. It wasn't a race, but I found myself like at the front of the pack, and I was like, man, this feels good. And I'm thinking, is everybody else just running slow so I can do this? I'll never forget that. But from that point on, I always finished near the front of the pack. My claim to fame that year was a blocked field goal. And the team went to kick a field goal. I somehow got in the right position, got high enough in the air, and actually blocked the ball before it went through the goalpost. And I'll never forget that. It happened to be against my own team at practice, but hey, it still counted, all right? I'm just saying. And I'm not making that up. And to be totally honest, since I'm putting all my cards on the table, I only played one season. And that's because I hurt my back, and I have paid that price for it ever since then. In fact, a while ago when that ball fell on the floor up here, I was really looking for Trey to bend over and pick it up because this has not been a good weekend as far as my back goes. But that's okay. We're here, and we're going to get through this, right? So I was thinking about today's the big game. And I was thinking about all sports really this week, coming into this, and thinking, what is it that gets a person to that big game? What do they got to do? What do they got to achieve? What does it take to get there? And I thought, to be successful in any sport, I think it takes three things. And here are the three things that I came up with: determination, dedication, and discipline. Everybody say determination. When I think about it, I think this is what it takes to be successful at any sport. Uncommitted, total sold out, determination, dedication, and discipline. Now, if you know me, I like words and I like definitions. So I had to come up with a definition for each of these words. So here it is: determination, the fixed intention to achieve a desired end. Think about that for a moment. The fixed intention to achieve a desired end. Dedication, self-sacrificing devotion. Discipline, control gained by obedience. Isn't that what it takes to be successful? Now, my sport of choice these days is fishing. Most of you know that. I love to fish. And there's a plate that sits on my desk that my wife gave me. In fact, here's a picture of it right here. And at the bottom it says determination. And my wife gave that to me because she knows how determined I can be sometimes once I make up my mind to do something. Well, this kind of looked like me this weekend. I chose to go out in 25, 30-mile-an-hour winds to try to fish a little bit. It was blowing so hard at times, I had even thrown an anchor overboard, and it was dragging the anchor. The wind was blowing so hard. But my determination paid off. Here you go. There it is. I finally got it. Hey, it counts. That's all I'm saying. It was the first one for 2022. So I'm on the board, and I keep count of every one of those I catch, believe it or not. It's a weird thing, but I do it. So again, regardless of what you're doing, to succeed, it's going to take these three things: determination, dedication, and discipline. And I hope you'll remember those definitions. The notes are online if you want to look them up later. But how many of you, if I were to ask you this question, how many of you would say you have what it takes? You don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you would say, when I look at that list, I have what it takes? How many of you like hard work? A couple of you. How many of you don't like hard work? Be honest. Yeah. See, you don't have any determination, self-discipline. Anyway, so this message is for you. I'm just saying. So make sure that you pay attention. You know, life is often compared to sports. Our spiritual journey is often compared to sports. There are several sports references in the Bible, believe it or not. Sports were a big deal, even in biblical days. The Olympics, for example, go way back some 3,000 years. Do you realize that? Olympics can be traced back some 3,000 years. That means they were around. Sports was a big deal even before Jesus walked the earth. But they were a big deal when he was around as well as many of the writers of the New Testament. And I think because of that, there's often these references in there to sports. And I want to look at a couple of those with you today. The first one we're going to look at is a reference that Paul makes to sports as he talks about life and particularly our spiritual journey. But I think what we're going to look at today, we're going to see applies almost in any area of our life if we're something that we're wanting to achieve. Now, when Paul writes this, he was very familiar with the Olympic Games in his day. Just up the road, not too far from where he was at when he wrote this to the Corinthians, in a place called Athens, Greece. They used to hold these Olympic Games. And so I think as Paul thought about them, he used that as an analogy to make his point. And so I just want to look at the first passage I want to look at is something that he wrote. It's found in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. I'm going to start in verse 24, and it says this: "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize?" Now, and running has always been a big deal in sports. And early days of the Olympics, just like it is now, it was still a big deal. It might have been the main event, especially during that time. So when Paul mentioned this, people would have known, they would have connected with it. We're in the middle of an Olympic season right now. So for many of us, we should be able to connect with this, all right? So he says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." Run in such a way as to get the prize. Now, Paul is not talking to a bunch of, a sports team when he says this. So what is he talking about? He's talking to people like you and me who are on a journey through life. And he says we need to be intentional about this journey that we're on. He says run this race in such a way as to get the prize. It's always about the prize, isn't it? When you think about it. The prize of being the best. Today, two teams will take the field. And I would say it's really not about the prize. It is about the ring, and I happen to wear my championship ring. Anybody got one of these? Anybody got a championship ring? You know what mine's for? Graduating from high school. Hey, that was a big deal back then, let me tell you. For a guy like me, that was a real big deal, all right? So I actually thought about this. I went found it in my drawer, and the amazing thing was I could get it on this morning. Now, I couldn't get it on this hand, so I had to take off oh, there it goes. Look at that. My hand shrank a little bit. So I don't have my wedding band on. Lynette will forgive me later. Oh, there we go. So, but these guys are going to compete this afternoon for a ring, but it's really not about the ring. It's about all the hard work that they put in to get to where they're at, to walk away from that field being number one, isn't it? It's about winning the prize. The question, do you have what it takes? Here's the second question. What do you want? Because this is the bigger question. What do you want? Do you know what you want? Because all of us have something that we want. All of us have something that we want to have. All of us have something that we want to be, something that we want to do. We have somewhere where we would love to go. What is that for you? What is it that you want? And do you have the determination, the dedication, and the discipline to get there, to get what you want? You know, I think you should know this by now. Those kind of big dreams, those kind of desires don't just fall in your lap. We don't achieve things. We don't get what we want. We don't get to go where we want. We don't become who we want to be just by sitting around and hoping one day that it's magically going to happen. It's going to take work. It's going to take determination and dedication and discipline. We have to run in such a way to win the prize. It's up to you. It's up to me to run that way. Paul continues, verse 25. He says this, everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. Everybody say strict training. You know what that is? Dedication. What's the next one? Discipline is one. What's the other one? Determination. All right, so the 3D words, all right? That's what strict training, that's what he's talking about. All right, being intentional. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. So here's the comparison that he's making. Back then, if you won, you got this crown. You know what it was? It wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, it wasn't bronze. It was some leaves, some branches that were kind of intertwined to make a round wreath, if you will. Often laurel leaves were used. And you know what they did? They painted them gold. And that was the crown. That's what they ran for. And he says they do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. And then Paul's going to kind of unpack that a little bit. Again, Paul's really talking about our spiritual journey and achieving, you know, what we want to achieve as it relates to our relationship with God through Christ. But I think what he talks about, and especially as we look at the next passage, applies to us pretty much in anything in life that we want. If we want it, we're going to have to go after it to get it. So Paul says, let me tell you what I want. Verse 26. Now he changes it to talking about us, them, to talking about him. And he says, therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. How many of you have seen the movie Forrest Gump? Remember the famous line? Run, Forrest. Where was he running to? Wherever he wanted to, right? Aimlessly. He just took off running one day. And when he got done running, he stopped and I guess walked home. I'm not sure how he got home, but he got back home. Paul says, I'm not running like that. He says, I'm not running aimlessly. He says, I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. If you aim at nothing, you will always hit it. If you aim at nothing, you will hit it every single time. In the fishing world, we say this, you will never catch what you don't fish for. You'll never get what you don't go after in life. That's true of our spiritual journey. If you want to grow spiritually, it's going to take spiritual disciplines. If there's something that you want, somebody you want to be, something, place that you want to go, something that you want to have, it's going to take intentionality on your part. Paul continues verse 27 and says, no, I strike a blow to my body and I make it my slave so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. I don't know if you followed any of the Olympics. I haven't followed a lot of it, but over the last couple of weeks, there have been a lot of disqualifications, especially in the area of speed skating. And as I've watched a little bit about that and followed up on some of it, really what it was a lack of determination, a lack of self-discipline, to be honest with you. all right? And so they got disqualified for the race that they were in. If there are rules to the game that you and I have to follow in order to be successful at what we're trying to do, it would be determination, dedication, and discipline. Paul is talking about his witness here before others and saying that, as a follower of Christ, I want to live my life in such a way to get the prize. And the prize that he talks about is the people that he would win to Christ. He was sold out. His mission in life was to win one more to faith in Jesus Christ. And he wanted to live his life in such a way that no matter what he did, he wasn't disqualified from that race, that people wouldn't look at him and go, you say one thing, but you believe and act and do something totally different. And so when he talks about that, that's what he's talking about. And I think that should be true for all of us as followers of Christ. But there are other things that we can do that can disqualify us for the prize that we're running for. And most of that would be a lack of determination, dedication, and discipline. Listen, what do you want? What do you want to have? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Then put a plan in place. Be determined, be dedicated, and disciplined to see it through. Second passage this morning that I want to look at with you. This may be one of my favorite parts of the Bible. If there was a locker room speech that was ever given in the scriptures, I think what we're about to look at is it. It's found in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, and it says this, therefore, everybody say therefore. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Now, whenever you see the word therefore, you always ask the question, what's the therefore? Because when the writer says that, he's saying, in light of what we've just talked about, in light of what we've just discovered, then do this. So he says, therefore, since we are surrounded. Now, Hebrews 12, believe it or not, comes after Hebrews 11. It's amazing how that works, but it does, all right? And to me, it's one of the most encouraging, challenging, uplifting, motivational chapters in the book of the Bible, in the Bible. Hebrews chapter 11. I've called it, many others have called it the same thing, the Hall of Fame. Because in this chapter, it lists a lot of men and women who were determined, dedicated, and disciplined when it come to following Christ and achieving what many would think would be the impossible. They faced odds that would have been easily for most people to give up and quit. And just say, I can't do that. Who do I think I am? But no, they stuck to it. It mentions people like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and Moses and Mrs. Moses. and then it lists this whole group of people, Gideon and Samson and David and Samuel and the prophets. And it just talks about all that these people, men and women, Rahab, a prostitute of all people, and what they were able to do because they were determined, dedicated, and disciplined to get it done. And so when the writer gets to chapter 12, and we don't really know who wrote Hebrews, but whoever it was an incredible communicator, but he says this. He says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, since we got all of these people who've run the same race that we're being challenged to run by God now, he says, since we've got this great crowd of people, these people that we can look back on who are people just like you and me. They weren't superheroes. They were just people who were determined, dedicated, and disciplined. He goes on, he says, then let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance. Everybody say perseverance. Let us run with, here's another way you could say this. Let us run with determination, dedication, and discipline, the race that is marked out before us. We've got this great group of people who over the years, at different times throughout history, have run the same race that you and I are running. He says, let's learn from them. And whatever it is that's weighing us down, that's keeping us from running this race, then let's run it. Let's get rid of it and run the race. So think about what it is that's holding you back. Is it self-doubt? I can't do this. I don't have what it takes. I'm not as good as that person. You don't have to be as good as that person. You just got to be as determined, maybe, as that person. What about those voices in your head that you've heard over the years? You'll never amount to anything. Who do you think you are? Those are the things that we got to get rid of. Those are the things that we got to lay us. What about a failed attempt? Have you tried it before and failed and given up? I tried, can't do it. Do you know how many athletes have failed, but yet they get up and they try again and again? I don't know, over the weekend, Lynette and I were watching these snowboarders going down the half pipe. And each time, each runner or each person gets 3 times down, and they take their best run. And we watch many guys who failed on the first attempt, failed on the second attempt. They get down to the third final deal, and guess what? They failed again. Some never made a run out of 3. But you know what? Most of those will be back next year because they won't give up. They're determined. They're disciplined. They're dedicated to what they're doing. You and I, listen, we're going to fail. But we fell forward. We learn from our mistakes. We learn, okay, yeah, I didn't get it right this time, but maybe I'll get it right the next time. And if I don't get it right the next, then I'll try it again. Listen, the first time I ever tried teaching, I swore I'd never do it again. And I'm still learning how to do this. I'm still trying to figure out how to best communicate to people. All right, that's the way life works. We keep trying. We keep pushing forward. We stay determined. I heard a story. I'll call this Shake It Off. I heard a story about a mule that fell in a hole one time. And the guys saw the mule down in this pit, and they could not figure for the life how to get down in the pit with him and get it. There just wasn't enough room, and they felt bad for the mule, and they thought, well, we can't just let him stay down there. It'll take days for him to starve to death, and so they thought, well, let's just bury him alive. That'll be more humane than letting them just kind of stay down there. And so they began to shovel dirt into the pit, and as they shoveled the dirt in the pit, it would land on the mule's back, and the mule would shake it off, and then he'd step up a little bit. And they kept throwing dirt in there, and every little bit he'd shake it off and he'd step up to pretty soon they had filled the hole full of dirt and he walked out of there. Sometimes it's what we got to do. We got to shake it off. Shake it off, step up, and keep going. And then the next thing I'd say we got to do, sometimes we got to make sure that we're focused. Paul in verse 2 says this, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. If there was anybody who was determined, dedicated, and disciplined, it was Jesus Christ. Listen to what that verse says. Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. He's the perfect example of someone who is dedicated and disciplined and determined. For the joy set before him, what was he focused on? He wasn't focused on the cross. He was focused on what was on the other side of that cross. And therefore, he was willing to endure it, even though he didn't want to. You remember the famous prayer in the garden? God, if there's any other way than the cross, then let me go a different way. But if not, your will be done, not mine. For the joy set before him, not the cross, but what was beyond the cross. So Jesus went to the cross, and he died there. And toward the end, right before he took his last breath, you know what he did? He yelled out in victory. You know what he said? It is finished. You know what he was saying? I crossed the finish line. I did it. I did what the Father asked me to do. I paid for the sins of the world. I took all of their sin upon me, and I paid for it for them. It is finished. And then it says, he took his place at the right hand of the Father, where he's still fighting for you and me today. fix your eyes on Jesus. Verse 3, consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. I can't think of a better locker room speech than that one. To think about what others have done for us, what Christ has done for us to keep pushing forward, to never give up, even when we blow it sometimes as a follower of Christ, to know that we're forgiven, that God loves us, that there's nothing that I could do, nothing that you could do that would make God love us any more than he already does. And there's nothing that you could do that would make him love you any less than he loves you. Because his love for us is perfect. His love for us isn't based upon what we do or don't do. It's based on the fact that our God created us to be in a relationship with him. That's all he wants. The good, the bad, and the ugly. When you start to lose focus or to give up, remember what your Savior endured, because he did that for you. You realize that, right? While his eyes were on the other side of the cross, what he was really focused on was you and me, and what he was going to be able to accomplish for you and me. And that is to provide a way back into a perfect relationship with God the Father. And he was willing to do whatever it took to make that happen. And so when you get discouraged, when you feel like that you can't take that next step, you can't endure one more moment of whatever it is that you're facing, just remember the people who passed on, who run the race before you, and remember Jesus Christ who ran for you. Keep your eye on the prize. Be determined, be dedicated, and be disciplined. Would you pray with me this morning? Father, this morning I pray just that we would be reminded that we can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. God, we have no excuse whatsoever to not keep trying, to not keep moving forward. Father, we got people who've run the same race, who come from the same backgrounds, who face the same oppositions that we do, but because of their determination, because of their dedication, because of their discipline, Lord, they were able to achieve great things. And God, that's true for every single one of us. And so God, forgive us for our laziness. Forgive us for not believing you. Forgive us for believing those voices in our head and not believing the truth that you've spoken into our lives. Forgive us for not focusing our eyes on Jesus Christ, the author and perfecter of our faith. God, make us more like him. And Lord, I pray and ask this in Christ's name, and we all agree together and said, amen. So today, I hope that you find the dedication, the determination, and the discipline that you need to face whatever it is that you're going through, to achieve whatever goal that you want to achieve, because with God, all things are possible.
Well, thanks so much again for stopping by. If you have any questions or would like to get connected here at Atlee Church, we would love to help or serve you any way that we can. And if God is doing something awesome in your life, we'd love to hear about it. You can email us directly at stories@atleechurch.org. And if you would like to support the ministries here at Atlee financially, you can go to our website and click the top tab, Give, and that helps us continue to get these messages out there and make a difference in the lives of so many. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again next week.